Hi, Mayor Marsh. Everyone, this is Loveland Mayor Jackie Marsh. I'm Jessica Schneider, editor of the Loveland Voice, and we're doing this follow-up interview to answer some questions from the community about the URA, the MFA, metro districts, how it all works together. I hope if you're watching this that you've had the time to get your minor in your armchair minor and what all these things are and what they mean to us. If you haven't, please go back and watch those videos. They're on our YouTube channel. So with that being said, yeah, I want to welcome Mayor Marsh, and I want to start by asking, the Tuesday City Council meeting was momentous and interesting and long. So Mayor Marsh, can you give us a little, just let us know what your perspective is since then? We've had a couple days to digest what happened there.
Because of the decisions made in the 2004 council electing to create a Centerra URA, taking farmland and declaring it blighted, that diverted the property tax revenue from all of the entities, not just Loveland City property tax. It took it from the county, the school district, those special districts. So now they finally get a seat at the table. What happened Tuesday night, and I have, no evidence other than what I observe, as I think anybody would have observed, it had been predetermined by the majority on council that they were going to elect Councilor Foley as chair. Nothing against Councilor Foley, but we didn't have what I would call a sincere and honest nomination process where people could self-nominate and nominate others, because they had, in my opinion, from what I observed, they had already determined that it was going to be a certain person. Typically, it's the mayor who is the presiding officer because they're the municipality that sets up the URA. And then the mayor pro tem is typically the vice chair. Our city attorney had previously announced that we would have to have elections for chair and vice chair. On what grounds, I'm not sure, but that was his determination. I know from other nominations in the past that I would not have the support of the majority on council. I think that is harmful to the mayor position. No matter who's in that position, you undermine. So I did not want that to have happen. But I did expect an honest nomination process. And in my opinion, having taken revenue from these other entities for a decade, almost 2 decades now, that one of those people, those new board members, should have had at least one of the leadership roles, as a way of, we honestly want to work with you. We honestly welcome you. We honestly want to negotiate with you, if this thing goes forward and we create a new URA. Obviously that was predetermined, so you try to play the game fair. And that's what I expect, of council members. Let it be a fair process. Let, the quick nomination of Councilor Foley, the second, which is not needed, and then the request that we close nominations. I mean, it's disappointing to me. It's a slap in the face of our new board members, even though I don't think they realized what had happened. I don't think they understood that this was a setup, in my opinion, from what I observe. And I think anybody sitting in that room would come to the same conclusion, is that it had already been determined who the chair would be. And that's not even helpful to the new chair. Sure. To not have an honest nomination process and an honest vote process. Sure. And it is what it is. We're where we're at. But, I don't think it's a good way to start off a new relationship with new board members who have, essentially had their money taken from them from over a decade. Yeah. So wow. I don't know how they feel, but that was my perception, and I found it very disappointing.
I have these questions. They're a compilation of questions that the Loveland Voice has received on our YouTube page, on Facebook, and then some of my own questions mixed in there. And I'm not going to differentiate really which is which. We're going to do this kind of town hall style where we don't expect you to have all of the answers, but I'm going to pitch you these questions from the community, including myself, and just hear what you have to say. So okay. We've got about 6 or 7, so we'll try to be succinct if we can.
Okay, all right.
Pardon me. So the first question, these nonprofit entities, and this is referring back to the URA video, you mentioned some of the nonprofit entities that are involved in the master finance agreement.
Uh-huh.
And the question is, okay, these nonprofit entities that receive the funds from tax assessments, do they then disperse these funds to pay for the cost of improvements to infrastructure? Could you answer that question?
So I think what the question's referring to is the PIC, the Public Improvement Corporation, that so when you buy something at, say, Macy's, you buy your item, you pay public improvement fee and a retail sales fee. And so there are these two nonprofits set up to receive the public improvement fee and the retail sales fee. The public improvement fee is to be dedicated to repaying the debt for the public improvements, infrastructure. Public improvements can be the sign that says Centerra, or it can be a sidewalk. And then the retail sales fee is collected by a separate corporation from that. The retail sales fee is not mentioned in the master finance agreement. It's never been clear to me what those funds are supposed to be expended for. And I've, you know, really had trouble getting answers to those type of questions. The public improvement fee, it sits in this PIC, Public Improvement Corporation Fund, but then it is distributed, to Centerra to determine how to spend it.
Gotcha.
So temporarily, it's in the city. We collect it with the sales tax, that we collect at all purchases.
Does the city get paid or reimbursed for like acting in that role?
Very minor amount.
Okay.
And if you look at some of to me, it would be a high administrative cost to do this. So you're getting, a check from Macy's, and some of it's for the state, some of it's for, well, that's probably confusing it a little bit. We are required to collect that public improvement fee, and it goes into this fund for later distribution. But the master finance agreement also calls for the city to audit. So we are supposed to literally visit all of those retail establishments to make sure that they are complying with the master finance agreement that says you will collect this. And then we are supposed to take steps if they are not complying in collecting and remitting it.
Does that happen?
That I've read different documents, and there's actually a number that we're supposed to audit, and I don't remember whether it's quarterly or monthly. But to me, it would be a fairly heavy administrative cost if we're supposed, one of the documents I read said we're literally supposed to have somebody occasionally sit and watch to make sure it's being collected. I don't know if that's actually ever been done, but it was in one of the documents I read years ago, or at
Okay.
least that's my real recollection.
Okay.
So yes, so the PIF is supposed to go public improvement, and that's a fairly wide category of how it can spend. I have no idea what happens with the retail sales fee.
Okay. Next question, and this is from the same commenter. Are these funds repaying debt from bonds? And then I'm going to go ahead and read the second part. So in 2029, when the estimated 200 million in bond principal comes due, is bankruptcy an option for the issuers? I would assume that could be a part of the big picture given the current commercial market vacancies. So I guess the question is like, and I've had the same question. So we're coming due on the 200 million bond debt. Maybe correct me if that's the wrong term. Who gets caught holding the bag there? What happens when we get to 2029 and nothing's changed really?
Well, I think the original agreement did anticipate that all bonds would be paid off by 2029. If you look at the original amounts borrowed, it was to be paid off in 2029. As late as 2008, when additional bonds were taken out, the maturity date stayed 2029. Subsequent councils have allowed the maturity date to be moved out. I think on some of the bonds it's to 2051. I think the most recent bonds might be 2053. Don't quote me on that. That's just going from memory. So what that means is the master finance agreement will end, it will sunset, but you still have what is now about 230 million in debt for districts 1 through 5. The way that it's set up, all of that debt is to be repaid with metro fees. So once they stop getting the diversion of property tax, which is the different taxes they get are about 9 million, one other additional 1.7 in public improvement fee. They're gonna about 9 million or so, 9 to 11 million stops. So currently what they're getting in metro fees is between 6 and 7 million. That is what will still be ongoing to repay whatever amount is left from that 230 million in debt. So what is ongoing is they get the specific ownership fees. And what those are fees from DMV, when you do your car registration. And then if you own a business like say Macy's and you have cash register and counters and racks to hold clothing, those businesses pay a specific ownership fee to the county. Those will be ongoing. So metro fees and specific ownership fees will be going to repay that debt. Who pays that metro fee ongoing? Are your commercial businesses inside Centerra, your office buildings, your retail, your restaurants, and your multi-family units.
So further to that question, and thank you for clarifying that. So what happens when, let's say for purposes of this example, there's 10 businesses and they are the ones paying for this. I'm sure it's a lot more. And 5 or 6 of those businesses go, we don't want to do this anymore. we can't afford to, business isn't working. We want to change our model, whatever. What happens when that pool of business owners shrinks? Does the debt that they are now carrying increase for each individual? Like who's left holding the bag?
So, and this was a question I had asked back in May or June when, they came forward with an additional 25 million in debt. Well, it was 18.8 they asked for, it turned into 25 million in debt. What the answer was, and, I was asking it rhetorically because I knew the answer. So these are revenue bonds. So when you go to borrow these bonds, what's your revenue source? How the bank wants to know, the lender wants to know, how are you going to repay this? So a revenue bond is people paying their property tax, get their county, county bill from the treasurer. You owe Thompson School District X amount, 40 mills. You owe the Metro District, what is right now for the District 2 is 62 mills. It will likely go up to 72 mills. So you owe your Metro District 72 mills. You owe Larimer County, I'm not sure what theirs are, maybe 30, I don't know. I don't remember what their mills are. Maybe it's only 15. The city is 9.56 or something. So here's your county assessor, county treasurer bill for your property. If you don't pay any one of those, if you don't write them a check for the entire amount due, they will put a lien on your property. So the collateral for these bonds is essentially the revenue coming from the county treasurer from you paying your property taxes. So you could potentially lose your building if you don't pay because somebody, you're gonna have a lien.
So the people holding the bag are the business owners. And if the business goes out of business and leaves, then who's holding the bag?
Well, who owns that property?
Whoever, the owners.
Yeah,
Got it.
whoever owns that property. And that was the point I was trying to make the other night. The 2004 projections, like overpromised and underdelivered. That the promises were that there were going to be, I think it's 10 million in commercial square footage. There were going to be far more retail establishments paying sales tax. There were going to be far more, businesses, supplying jobs and paying property tax. So without those additional developments, you have fewer people footing that bill for 230.
Right.
So
and is bankruptcy an option?
What I'm not sure who, you're talking about individual property owners if they fail to pay, you're asking questions that would be probably beyond my
Okay,
expertise.
that's fine.
Um,
That's fine.
because it's the Metro District itself is responsible to pay for the bond. So
Okay,
what happens if the people that are supposed to pay the Metro District don't pay? That would mean that, I mean, if I follow the thought pattern, it means if the Metro District can't make its bond payment, then it will go into default in theory. So yes, your bond holders are going to go after the Metro District. So that's the logical process as that would be. What kicks in because of changes in some of the borrowing that the council approved is if you miss even one bond payment, the bond holders are allowed to start charging compound interest. Imagine compound interest on $230 million in debt. It would balloon astronomically in a very
yeah,
short period. So I guess that if I think the process out, so thank you for asking the question, is it would be the Metro District that's defaulting to the bond holders. How the Metro District goes after the property owners not paying their fees, you know.
okay. Okay, well, thank you. I mean, that did clear some things up, and sometimes we clear things up by saying we don't know the answer to that. That's something we need to
Or you have to
understand
sit
more.
there and think, okay, now let me
Yeah,
think about this. Okay, who owes the money to who?
right, right. No, thank you for clarifying that.
And regarding, I made a comment about the multifamilies. I'm not sure how that goes forward after 2029. There's a residential debt that the Lake Vista apartments pay. I assume they have to pay that until it's paid off, but I'm not an expert on the residential debt.
Okay. Well, maybe some of our we are rich in researchers, I feel like, in the Loveland community. People like to find out. And so hopefully if you're watching and you have some of these answers or know where to find them, we invite you to
Yeah.
share them with us. Okay, so I want to check back in. A standard is that this is a question. Kind of. A standard is that URA redevelopment projects should result in a similar or less need for city services. That obviously would not be the case for South Centerra. So I guess my question to you is that an accurate statement?
Well, if you're doing truly urban redevelopment, that may be, because if you have an area of town that has a lot of crime and you're having the police go out all the time and make, arrests, which results in court actions, that could be very costly. And you have vacancies, so you're not getting the tax revenue. So in theory, maybe that redevelopment of a truly blighted downtown area, you'd have less services needed. But in the case of taking vacant land and turning it into blight and creating a URA, if you picture that lot across from Target right now, it's requiring almost zero city of Loveland or county or school district funds, right? Or EMS. I mean, who's making calls out there? There's no shoplifting. There's no car accidents. There's no heart attacks. There's no Chelson uses or library uses or all the things that these our taxes go for. So when you turn that into a development, now you do require services. You require the full services pretty much of the city and the county and the EMS and the school, right? So costs go up, except you're not generating the funds from it that you need to pay for those services.
Right.
That's the problem.
Okay, thank you. This is a question from someone. Can Centerra URA funds be used to develop the promised Explorer Park?
And I'm not familiar with the
Okay,
promise.
I wasn't either, but I wanted to be fair and include all the questions I found.
But public improvement fees can be can be used for things that benefit the public. A park, I think probably, and I haven't looked into it, Chapunga Park was probably, but when you use public funds, it has to be open to the public. So like if you were to build a swimming pool, you can't restrict it to just the people in the residential area. It has to be open to the public. So I imagine if you had a city-owned I'm not sure what the Explorer Park is, but say that means like a Discovery Museum or something. If the city were to own, or the Metro District even were to own it, that's a public benefit that is open to anybody to go to. So in theory, but if it's going to be privately owned, there are limitations on that.
How far away in this proposed South Centerra URA, which is a stretch to say now that I
Yeah.
understand more. I think the question was asked, how far away is fracking going to be from schools, people, families? And I don't think that question was answered. Or at least the presenter wasn't able to answer the question, I think was coming back with that. So I hope that presenter does, and that we will understand that. I found that a little strange that wouldn't be a very front of mind number, but what do I know?
It was a non-responsive answer when I asked that question on January 24th. I asked, how close are those residences going to be to where you're proposing the fracking pad? When they answered Jody's question, they tried to say it's on a different portion, a different lot. It's 149 acres. The proposed fracking well pad is on the southeast corner of those 149, 151 acres. I question whether that meets the requirements. And I'm hoping that COGCC will not allow it. If you look at our sports park and you go to the very edge of the easternmost soccer field along County Road 20E, you can get to about 2,200 feet when you get to the eastern edge of the Centerra property. So you can, in theory, you keep it 2,000 feet away from our soccer field, but that means you're going to have to build that pad such that it stays along that fence line. I mean, you would have to, and I don't think it can be built that small, but okay, assuming you could, if you build it on that very edge of the southeastern edge of the Centerra property, now you're less than 2,000 feet from our open lands trailheads. So I question whether this is within, you'd have to be asking for a variance, I believe. That's my understanding anyway.
Okay.
So now you incorporate, now to the north, you want to build housing. Well, so the question that was asked and that Councilor Jody Shattuck McNally was trying to make is there are different setbacks. If you have an existing residential neighborhood, I believe the setback is 2,000 feet. But if you put that well pad in before there's housing, let's see, it's only, no, I'm mixing this up, I think. It's only 500 feet versus 2,000 feet. Pre-existing neighborhood versus non-pre-existing neighborhood. I think I probably confused everybody with that.
Let me just repeat back to you. So, and this is getting to the answer I was hoping for, or just an answer to my question. Is it advantageous for developers to build residential and commercial before they begin fracking, or is it the other way around?
There is a shorter setback. So it's advantageous. It's advantageous to put the well pad in first, because then you can build 500 feet.
Okay.
Up to 500 feet.
Okay. And and this is me. It's not a conspiracy theory, but it's a question. And I've seen it, echoed in other forums and whatnot. To me, it just, again, this development isn't my world, but and we only have a few minutes, so I'll try to be brief. To me, it seems really strange that we want to frack in Whole Foods and we want to raise families all in the same little plot. I find that to be very odd. And there must be some reason for it. And it sounds like the advantageous, frack first, then build might be part of it. But is the other that their infrastructure is required in that area to frack? And is, developing business and residential, is that just like another way to get there, or am I being silly?
So I won't say that that's the reason, but it's what you're talking about is something that I have hypothesized about for years. Is you have all this area that you could do oil gas drilling, right? why do developers want to put it near neighborhoods and schools and shopping centers?
Yeah,
Logically, it's a lot cheaper if the roads and the water and everything are already there than picking a lot that's way out. So logically, I can see why they want to do it, because it's going to cost them far less than building from scratch. That's logic. Now, is that this case? I just in general, I think that's why it happens. It's cheaper for them to do the development if the roads are already there. Back a few years ago, there was a company wanting to frack very close to this. And that was one of the issues that I raised, is like, where are you going to get the water? you know, and it's commonly done. Well, they'll take it out of a fire hydrant and stuff, versus the cost of having to truck it in.
wow.
So yeah, but you'd
Okay,
have to have the city's permission to
right.
take it out of a fire hydrant.
Okay, I guess before we wrap up, what are the next steps? What are we coming up on next? What decisions are coming next? When? How can we engage?
Encourage, residents to voice their opinions for or against, and you should be raising those with your city council, your county commissioners, your school board, and your Thompson EMS, and those people, because all of these people will at some point be voting on this. I think the next steps is that it's actually city council that has to agree to modify the current, I don't know if it's the URA or the council. I'm assuming it's the council has to agree to take the 149 acres out of the current URA and then use it to create a new one. But I would point out, as I did the other night, because you don't have as many businesses to help pay off that $230 million in debt, it seems to me you'd want to keep it in the current URA, get it developed, and then you have more businesses to help pay for it.
Good feedback. And when is the next decision making? Is it at the next council meeting?
What I see in my rolling calendar is March 21st is when a lot of this is coming down, as far as what I see right now. The next rolling calendar update will be coming Tuesday. This coming Tuesday, we should get a new rolling calendar. I encourage people to follow that just in general. A lot of
I'll
times,
put a link on a link to that, link to the ruling calendar. Okay,
yeah, because,
before we get cut off, sorry, go ahead.
okay, other things that might come up that you need advance notice to be able to comment on, you're gonna see that first in the rolling calendar. Don't wait for the agenda packet.
Okay. Got it. That's good. That's good feedback. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jackie. Really appreciate this follow up and these, your insight into all of this. It's so confusing. I'm so encouraged by all the voices that we're seeing who really do want to get educated and get involved, and who see that this is about all of us, not a few of us. So thank you so much for your education and information. We will talk to you again soon.
All right, thanks for having me, Jessica. Thank you for what you do.